Welcome back to America on the Road with Chris Teague, Jack Nerad back with you. We're so glad you're with us on America on the Road for another year of America on the Road. I guess our 32nd year. It's kind of crazy that
I started when I was 9 years old, Jack.
Yeah, I started before I was born. I started when you were 30 or something. No, I'm kidding. But in any case, we have road test vehicles and pretty cool ones, too. Well, I was driving a vehicle that essentially is a rolling parade. It's a one-vehicle parade. I mean, when you are in the Volkswagen ID.Buzz, which is the reimagined Microbus of old for the electric era, you're driving in a vehicle that's going to attract a ton of attention. And this is a vehicle that I would love to love. And I will tell you whether I loved it or not as we go through this, because there's some things about it I loved and some things maybe not so much. But certainly from the looks point of view, it just has some really interesting touches, too. It isn't just the box shape, but there's a lot of details on this vehicle. I love the two-tone paint, of course. It's very retro, has retro-inspired wheels, but there are other cool things about it that I think cost money that you would see on a concept vehicle but would go away from most production vehicles. Well, it's right here on the ID.Buzz, so kudos to Volkswagen for that. I had a 1968 Type 2, what they called early bay bus. So I'm going to compare and contrast this a little bit with what I just drove. The current ID.Buzz has a minimum of 282 horsepower. Those are in the rear drive models. 335 horsepower in 4-motion all-wheel drive. Estimated electric-only range, of course it's an electric vehicle, so it's all electric only, is 234 or 231 miles, respectively, so just about the same. Listen to the figures on this, Chris. I think you'll get a kick out of this. This Type 2 vehicle that I used to drive, I drove it back and forth to college when I was a college student, had a 1,600 cc engine, 57 horsepower, Chris, 57 horsepower. And here are the statistics on 0 to 60. 0 to 60, 37 seconds. 37 seconds, Chris. Not 3.7. 37. Top speed, 65 miles an hour. Now, I bested that when the wind was behind me. I think I got this thing up to 70 miles. And it literally was a vehicle that the wind made a big difference with. I mean, I kind of felt like I was in a sailboat. And as a sailor, I kind of got a kick out of that. Well, let's get back to the ID.Buzz. Charging is efficient, DC fast charging from 10 to 80% in just 26 minutes, so that's competitive. Big customizable interior, 145 cubic feet of cargo space, flexible seating for as many as 7. Usually it's a 6-passenger vehicle, which I find is maybe a little bit of not the greatest use of space. It has a big infotainment screen that works pretty well, 12.9-inch infotainment screen, and a bunch of driver assistance system. Pricing starts at about $60,000 for the Pro S. My test vehicle, let's dive into that a little bit. It was a Buzz Pro S Plus 4Motion, so kind of top of the line. It had 335 horsepower, as I mentioned, a 91 kilowatt-hour battery, so about 230 miles of range. It will tow 3,500 pounds, which is kind of interesting. And had the two-tone exterior that was, of course, inspired by the VW bus with retro wheels. I mean, what's your take on this overall, Chris? What's your take on the ID.Buzz?
The look is staggering. I think it looks fantastic. They did a great job translating from the Type 2 or the classic styling into the modern age. For me, I have 2 big thoughts about this, or 3 big thoughts about this. The first is that I'm sure it's very useful. Volkswagen does a great job at adding, clever features that people don't think they need, but they realize that they're very useful. I think the range is lacking and the price is too high. And you could say, well, it's a luxury van or an upscale van, but $70,000 for a Volkswagen just won't cut it for a lot of people. And even me knowing what the van can do, it's a little steep.
Well, you kind of cut through the chaff here because that's kind of it. I mean, it's not really a minivan. It's more of an SUV competitor, I think, than it is a minivan competitor because it's not nearly as useful as most minivans. I love the looks of it. What is interesting about the design is It captures a lot of what the previous microbuses had. But one thing that is very different is you sit well behind, as a driver, you sit well behind the front wheels. In the Type 2 that I had, I was literally sitting right over the front wheels. I mean, I was ahead of the front wheels. My legs were ahead of the front wheels. And that has some interesting results to it. This has a wheelbase of 131.1 inches, Chris. I mean, the wheels are at the corners. This is not that long a vehicle because it's not that much longer than that. But that's an incredible wheelbase, and what that means is the turning radius is gigantic. It's like turning around a super tanker, and I found that kind of interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to have to park that thing in a parking garage in downtown LA, so I'll leave that to you.
Yeah. Some weird things about it. I mean, it has these toggles between front and rear window switches as opposed to just dedicated switches for those kind of things. I was able to set the side view mirrors, the exterior mirrors, once, but I couldn't figure out how to do it again. I mean, there's some combination of toggling you have to go through. So this is a vehicle I would love to love, and mostly I did, and maybe it's one of those vehicles where you kind of put up with the fact that it's not exactly easy to use for the just the sheer joy of having a vehicle that looks this cool. $70,000 was my as-tested price, so that's a lot of money for this vehicle, I think. But this is a vehicle that puts a smile on everybody's face. It's fun to drive. There's a lot to like about it. So mostly I like this thing. It was kind of an interesting combination of wonderfulness and frustration. And,
yeah, I think some of those quirks might be worth the price for some Volkswagen diehards. I'm sure they'll sell plenty of them.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And a lot of people stop me on the street and were wanting to talk to me about it. Well, when we come back, we will have a terrific guest for you. Brian Janisch is an expert on the Nissan GTR, so we'll be talking with him about that when we come back. Stay with us, and we'll be right back right here on America on the Road.